Welcome to the Industry Insider, brought to you by PromoCorner. Each week, promotional product professionals Meg Erber, Jeff Franklin, and Stephen McFadden, along with special guests, will discuss industry news, trends, and events with a focus on educating the promotional products industry. The Industry Insider, the nerdy news you need to know.
Welcome back to yet another exciting episode of the Industry Insider, your promotional products podcast where you can get all the nerdy news you need to know about. My name is Jeff Franklin, National Accounts Manager with Headwear USA, and I'm joined today by three other lovely folks. But of course, before we get to them, we got to tell you about our fine sponsors today, our good friends over at Bell Promo. They are the home of the 12-piece minimum on everything. They offer simplified pricing, one low setup, and never repeat setups, regardless of the number of colors, locations, or decoration method. Bell Promo has the largest inventory of product styles and colors, and in top categories like drinkware, bags, writing instruments, and apparel. So be the reason someone smiles today, and go check them out at bellpromo.com. That's BELPROMO.com. And tell them the Industry Insider sent you. Why don't we say hi to Bedroom Meg? Bedroom Meg, how are you doing today?
I don't know if I like that nickname or not.
Well, you know, that's a good point. But it's what came to mind, you know, the background.
Oh, wow. That's
lovely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you.
Wonderful bedroom.
Thank you. Working remote this week on a specific territory. So this is where I am living for the week. It's nice. And it's not a virtual background, but it looks like it almost. See?
It does actually. It's a very nice background. and I like that there's a hat on VJ's stand, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yes. And my yoga mat.
Does that mean you get the right side of the bed?
That side. That is the left side. Actually, it's always the side. It's always the side closest to the door. It doesn't matter.
All right, fair enough. Steve McFadden, how are you doing today?
Fantastic.
And what side of the bed do you sleep on?
What's that?
And what side of the bed do you sleep on? Oh boy,
this is taking a turn.
Left.
Meg, it's your fault. You know.
I mean, it's your fault, Bedroom Meg. You had to bring this up.
Yeah, come on. All right. Well, we are joined today by a special guest. Happy to have Chris Ruvo from ASI back with us today. And look, we're going to talk about the UPS strike that didn't happen, and what has happened in the past, and sort of the ramifications of something like that if it were to happen, along with a few other things. But Chris, it is customary for us to give our special guest a good 3 to 4 minutes to introduce yourself, maybe how you got started in the promotional products industry, and what you've been up to since. So take it away, sir.
Oh my gosh, I'm definitely not interesting enough to fill 3 or 4 minutes. But to answer maybe one of your earlier questions, I'm usually on the couch, depending on how the day goes with work. So that's the side of the bed I'm on.
Fair enough.
Anyway, I entered the industry in 2011. I have a background in journalism. I was covering crime and courts for newspapers in the Philadelphia area, so pretty exciting stuff. Then wanted to make a transition to business media, and ASI is based in the Philadelphia area. And I applied and learned about this whole wide, wonderful world of promotional products that, even though I was aware of what they were, I really wasn't aware of this entire industry that did all this stuff. And I guess since I've been kind of fascinated by it, everything that goes into producing the merchandise that we literally see everywhere we go, and what a huge economic contributor our industry is, to GDP, everything. So it's been an interesting ride. My role with ASI is I'm our news director. So I'm focused on a lot of the business topics, the governmental developments, trends that are going to affect our industry essentially. And we have a daily news site, asicentral.com/news. Get that plug in there. So Michelle Bell, my boss, will be happy. And
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle. And, where we're basically covering anything that is relevant for the industry. And I'm helping drive a lot of that content.
That's awesome. Well, yes. Hi, Michelle. Michelle, how are you doing? Now, Chris, we're super pumped to have you on. So thank you for coming on to the show and discussing for people that maybe don't know what could have potentially happened like yesterday or over the last couple of weeks. Do you want to fill us in on what was going on with UPS?
Yeah. So the most basic thing is that approximately 340,000 UPS workers. That's drivers and logistics personnel, like warehouse support. Were set to go on strike August 1st if there wasn't a tentative tentative agreement on a new 5-year contract for them. That tentative agreement was reached between the UPS workers union leadership and UPS corporate. That said, the possibility of a strike, while at this point very remote, is still on the table because the rank and file union members have yet to approve the contract. So there's very few people who don't expect that to happen. Most expect that this is a very favorable contract to the workers, and they got a lot of what they were looking for, and the union leadership is very happy about it. So it is expected that rank and file will approve, but it still technically hasn't happened. So there's a remote possibility that you could still see a strike, but it most likely has been averted.
I will say they did vote, and it was 161 to 1. So
okay, so that was the Teamsters local. So you have the negotiating committee,
okay,
negotiating with UPS. That's like the mega ultra important union leadership.
The Chris bosses.
Then there's local union halls, right?
That opens tomorrow. It looks like.
So the local union halls, that was the vote that you're referring to, Meg.
Okay.
Where that localized union leadership did vote overwhelmingly to approve it. But now it goes to those hundreds of thousands of workers that work out of those various union halls, and they approve it. And that voting process, as Stephen pointed out, starts August 3rd and it goes till August 22nd. So there's like these 3 layers of approval that need to happen, and that third one is outstanding. If you really want to get into the minutia of union voting and everything.
Not today, but maybe next time.
So they're wasting the rest of the summer to do this vote. By the time they get the air conditioners in the trucks, they're not going to need them.
Oh yeah, well that's funny because that was such a huge issue during the negotiations. They're hot and sweaty, especially when it's 100 degrees in Texas.
Yeah.
So, but they're gonna have air conditioning units in their newer trucks, not their existing ones. So.
Yeah.
And this is like the hottest summer ever. Sorry.
What were some of the other issues, Chris? Do you know, or like, do you have any of the details as far as like what the workers were looking for, or what?
Absolutely. So I think always it's wages and benefits is first and foremost. There was a real feeling that UPS workers and shipping and delivery workers in general kept the economy running during COVID. When a lot of other people in white collar settings were working from home, they were still out and about making deliveries, making sure essential medicine supplies and everything got where it should, and that helped drive record profits for UPS. Literally, I mean that's fact. It was record profits for UPS, and the union leadership felt that their members should see some of the benefit that UPS corporate saw through all that volume, basically. So that was a big thing, and as it turned out, a lot of the full-time workers, they got pretty quickly to an agreement, or fairly quickly to an agreement on what they wanted, but they felt that part-time workers, which play a really essential role in powering UPS, were still being terribly underpaid. So that was really over these last few weeks in the lead up to that strike deadline. That was really one of the major sticking issues was pay for these part-timers and getting them what they felt was necessary. Jeff, as you alluded to, better health and safety things like getting air conditioning in trucks and certain other various things that probably a lot of people on our end aren't care about. They wanted, improvements there as well, and they generally got them.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do see that as far as the AC thing is concerned, that's for all new van sprinters, delivery vehicles after January 1st, 24. So it's going to be only the new vehicles. They're not going to go.
They're not going to retrofit.
No, they're
actually anti-retrofit them now. So like they come with them and then they remove them. It sounds like, but moving forward, they'll just keep them in. So it's wild.
Yeah.
How is I don't know if you know, I know earlier before the show, we were talking about the 1997 strike, the things that they're asking for. Obviously the times have changed dramatically. What was the big differentiator? Do you know, but what they were asking for in that earlier strike versus what they were asking for this time? I mean, I'm sure it was money as well and compensation, but was there any unique tidbits that you may know about?
Man, I wish I could give you a great answer. All I know is
Sorry.
what I generally. No, it's okay. I mean, I read a USA Today article on it, and it glazed over it, and the bit was essentially, wages and benefits and certain working conditions too. But as far as like the details, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Meg, are you referring to the time they struck back in '97?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
You
this
had
has
some stuff
happened.
to talk about that, right?
Yeah, so it's happened in the past. I mean, it's not like
Mhm.
foreign, but it's been obviously a while. So, Chris, I think you've got some pretty good statistics as far as like the number of employees they had back in '97 when they struck versus what it was now. I mean, it's almost three
Yeah.
times as many employees, right?
Yeah, it's and off top, I can tell you, of course, there's about 340,000 workers that were covered by this contract. Now, back then, it was under 200,000. I think it was around 185,000. And part of the big reason for that increase in workers is hey, we live in an e-commerce world now, and there's so much more business happening through shipment and fulfillment, and UPS has just grown. So the economic impact this time around would have been more significant than it would have been, and the supply chain disruption would have been more significant because of how much more UPS has even relied upon than it was, back in the late 90s. By one estimate, a 10-day strike would have cost the U.S. economy about $7 billion. So it's not an insignificant number to be looking at. So that's kind of, to me, that's the big comparative, that even that 97 was very significant in terms of a strike, but it would have been much more so even now.
Well, and let's dive into that a little bit, because I know in '97, I got some information about when it happened. I wasn't in the industry at that time, but my brother-in-law was. And he had mentioned that when they did strike in '97, it lasted for a couple of weeks. And then, of course, it took a few weeks to then rebound after that. So you're talking about, more than a month-long fiasco for something like that. And the number that you're talking about for I think you said it was in a week. 7 billion, is that what you said, or was it
10 days, 7 billion is what the estimate was.
Yeah. So I mean, just imagine what that would have been, back then, and how much it did, and how much worse it would be now. But he had mentioned also that, because back then USPS, they weren't really doing packages, it was all just mail and letters and things like that. You have that option maybe a little bit now. But back then in '97, it was really just UPS and FedEx. And FedEx, from what I'm being told, actually required you, when that strike went on with UPS, they actually required you to have an account with FedEx, and they weren't taking any new accounts because of the strike, because they needed to mitigate how much they, could take on. Because it was a huge demand on them then. I mean, they were the only players in the game for over a month at that point. Well, several weeks. So, I mean, could you imagine like not having, like, what are you going to do? If you don't have an account with FedEx, what are you doing with your packages for a week or for multiple weeks?
So great question. So this time around, my understanding was that FedEx was going to try to take on to try to capture some of that excess, or not excess, that influx, I guess, of packages that would have happened. But they made it very plain that they were going to prioritize, pre-existing accounts. So if you were consistently using UPS, you didn't do much business or any with FedEx. FedEx is like, yeah, we'll try to get to you to help you out, but we're going to definitely help the people who have been our bread and butter, first. So
makes sense.
So like, you also alluded to the Postal Service, right? So the Postal Service has changed its business model. We're in the the email and digital text era, et cetera. So they recently launched Ground Advantage, where they do a lot more. It's basically a package service that is intended to rival, I use that in quotes, UPS or FedEx, but it's still it's a new service. The degree, there's questions over its efficiency, how costs compare, and everything like that. The most basic thing I would say is that if UPS strike, even for a short amount of time, there would be a whole ripple through the domestic shipping supply chain. And what that looks like is there's going to be delays, there's going to be backups, efficiency is gonna lag, and you're probably looking at higher prices, just because they can. It's I'm going to charge. You're desperate. I'm going to charge you a premium, and they would have.
Yeah. So speaking of ripples through the whole domestic, unless you guys want to go into something else before we segue, but
well, I did want to touch on there's a nice bridge there talking about price increases and wage increases. So just I'm going to cherry pick a few things from the Teamsters tentative agreement that they've been posting, a lot of which have to do with the wage increases. For those that don't know, so one of the things is all part-time people will immediately be put at 21 an hour. If you're at that or above, you get $1.50 increase and subjected up to, I think it's $4.50 over the life of the contract, which is 5 years. There's a $2.75 wage increase immediately if you're full-time, but if you're not at the $49 per hour base rate, you immediately get brought up to that, which $49 an hour is pretty awesome.
It's $101,000 a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then in addition to that, over the life of the contract, they'll see a wage increase of up to $7.50 over that as well. And then there's talks of 7,500 new full-time members being added to try to cut into the shortfall of 22,500 open positions. So that's, if you just start doing the math, it's like crazy amounts of financial ramifications for this. And I wonder, will that all just come out of UPS profit, or is it going to lead to wage increases? Right. So
wage increases or rate increases.
Yeah, so
You're not going to be able to increase the rates too much, or else you're going to, I mean, because you're still competing with FedEx. Like there's still a competitor.
So that's kind of where I'm leading. Like, what do we think the ripple effect of this new deal will bring? Do we think we'll see considerable changes in rates? Can they have considerable increases in rates, with what else is out there? What's your, obviously there's no crystal ball, but what do we think?
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Yeah. What do you think?
Asking me?
Yeah, you're the expert.
All right. So I do think there's going to be rate. I don't think it's going to be like a wham bow, like, massive, overwhelming one all at once. But UPS is a publicly traded company. They essentially they're beholden to stockholders, and they need to drive value to stockholders through profit. And any diminishment off that doesn't look good. Excuse me. And when you look at what their recent, excuse me,
water break.
Yeah, cheers. What some of the recent profits have been, I don't think that they're going to look to scale that back. And I think there's a ripple effect with price increases too, right? Okay, so if FedEx sees that its main competitor is increasing rate in service, it now knows that there's some bandwidth in the market to do so as well. So I think it ultimately does have a knock-on effect of price increases. I don't know. I couldn't guess what those percentages.
It's hard to speculate for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't guess what the percentages would be, but I would expect rate increases with time over the life of this contract, which probably would have come anyway, but maybe even more significant now.
Sure. Yeah. Now that they know the value of what it's going to equal, they can figure out how to tier that, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But don't they use fuel surcharges and things like that to increase the price, and then you never see it come back down?
What do you mean? They just throw all the extra charges on the supplier side of it.
but that's what I'm saying. So I mean, as far as the rate increases, I don't know that. I mean, they might increase a little bit, but I really don't think that they can increase it very much, because you're still dealing with competitors. And Chris, like you had mentioned, you've got USPS that's now is sort of in that ballpark or in that field as well. And they've got the infrastructure to do it. They've got the drivers. They've got all the, the locations. I mean, if anybody's really set to sort of capture some of that, I think it would be the USPS. But yeah, I don't know. I think with the amount of business that they've increased because of e-commerce and how much they've, continued to grow, I think a lot of that's going to have to come off of UPS a little bit. But like you said, I mean, it is a publicly traded company. They are beholden to the stockholders. So I don't know. That's an interesting question.
I don't want to open Pandora's box on this, but I'm just one of the things here too is talking about the number of changes that they requested, and there were 60 total, and they're priding themselves that there were 60 total changes with 0 concessions made on the Teamster side, and it's just the power that they have in this negotiation. It's where will it stop? I don't want to, forecast, but 5 years from now, who says they can't just do it again and do it again? And what choice do we have? Right. And it's kind of a scary conundrum. It's not necessarily a monopoly, because there are other options, but will eventually this get to a tipping point?
Great question, Stephen. I was trying to go there, but I couldn't put those thoughts together. That was a great question.
First thing I'll say is I think it's a little bit of hyperbole in their statement that they made no concessions. I think if you go behind the curtain, they definitely wanted, for instance, the delivery trucks retrofitted now with air conditioning, which I would argue that was probably a concession, whether they publicly acknowledge that. Yeah, I think it. But anyway, to your point, you raise a great question, because essentially it is FedEx and UPS who we're relying on for these services. And I mean, there are, certain regional providers, like I think if you're out west, like On Track is one you could use. There's to a much lesser degree, like a DHL or certain
laser ship.
Yeah. Like, so there are, but essentially it's UPS and FedEx, and you're and you are to a degree beholden to that workforce and the bargaining power that they have. And even though I would argue that the unions did make some concessions or met a little bit halfway on certain things, this was a slam dunk win for the union. Like UPS knew that they had very little they could do, and they knew that even if they were already starting to experience, people are getting nervous, shippers are getting nervous.
Yeah.
They're already starting to move some business away prior to the strike even happening, right? I mean, you guys may have been doing that in the course of your own business. So that reality alone, they just knew that they could not let this happen. And that speaks to the power of the unionized workforce.
That's crazy. So quick question. Let's say this did happen. Let's say yesterday was August 1st and they were like, you know what? Not today. I'm not showing up. How quickly do you think it would take for the U.S. government to step in? And do you think we would even notice? Do you think as of today, August 2nd, if they went on strike yesterday, it would have even touched us? Or do you think this would have gone on for a good 24 hours before the government stepped in, something along those lines? Like, I just want to see your thoughts on that.
It's a political answer, and I know politics, but I think it's not a secret that the administration in Washington is one of the most pro-union administrations that has ever been in the White House. The president kind of campaigned on that, on being very pro-union and having blue collar roots and this and that. And I think that there was pressure for him to not intervene on this one, or for Congress not to intervene, because if you remember, there was the West Coast port workers were threatening to strike. There was an intervention from the Biden administration there that helped broker a deal. Last year, there was the railroad workers were threatening to strike. There was intervention from Congress there. This time around, Sean O'Brien, who heads up the Teamsters union representing the UPS workers, specifically reached out to Biden and leaders of Congress and said, listen, don't intervene. Like, you talk about being pro-union.
Takes away the power almost.
Yeah. Like, let us get the contract we deserve, and don't let UPS suffer the repercussions. And there was certain members of Congress, mostly Democrat, but there was, I think there was some bipartisanship in there too, a few Republicans as well, who said, no, we are not going to intervene on the UPS talks this time around. And last I had seen, so don't hold me to this, I think the Biden administration was mum on, they basically didn't say whether they would intervene or not intervene. There was definitely a lot of speculation that if things really started to if you're getting into days upon days and we start to hit that range I mentioned before, where it's $7 billion worth of economic impact in 10 days, I'm guessing there would have been intervention.
They would have had to. I mean, people would have had their pitchforks, man. I mean, that would have been happening on day 2 or 3, not day 7. This is a different world. This is a definitely different world.
And we think about it from the lens of, my hats or shirts can't make it for an event, but there's very important supplies.
Yeah.
Medical supplies for hospitals.
Medical and, pharmaceutical and food. And, those are the things that would have been, it would have caused some sort of intervention or some, prioritization of materials. Like, I don't know how that would have worked.
Yeah. And Stephen, to your point, we were talking about 97 before. Medical supply deliveries were affected in that strike. So that was just one of the issues in there. And you're talking about prioritization. If this did become a more prolonged strike, do you think they're going to be super worried about, like delivering, branded shirts, or are they going to get like insulin to hospital or whatever?
Right.
Might be a little dramatic, but still, like that's the point. I don't think we'd be a higher priority on the list.
I'll let you tell the customer that.
They think differently enough.
Sorry, Steven. I'm gonna have to let Chris tell you why you're not getting your shirts.
Outrage.
I think it's only a matter of time, or at least I would hope that it's only a matter of time before there's some type of like courier network that's created in order to like rival some of these trucking or some of these logistics companies. There needs to be more competition in that space. Like only having 2 options is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what happens with these smaller people, like the on-tracks or the laser ships. And it's funny, actually, during COVID, I was like, I started a courier business. I did a business plan. I was like, this is it. I started before COVID hit. And then when COVID hit, I was so busy. I mean, when I'm talking like 23-hour days in the first 3 weeks, it was so insane. And I'm like, I have no time to even think about that. And then the months leading up after that, I was like, and then I'd already started the business. So then when it came time to do my taxes, I was like, well, damn, I have to pay all these taxes. Yeah. So I closed it right after that. I was like, that was a learning lesson, but still it would have been, even if it was for my customers only or whatever, I would have been double dipping there.
The biggest, Jeff, to your point, there's obviously such a huge overhead taking with, owning, the delivery vehicles and stuff, but even just to talk to multiple different courier networks. So I know there's some out west that we've used for packages that are within, a couple hundred miles in Los Angeles and stuff. And they've got a great system, but it only goes so far, right. So it's like, how can we get this system to do a zone to this system to, basically create these networks? Something like that would be incredible, and I think would create that competitive advantage for some of those. But
the problem, right? And you guys know is that it's like the Walmart or Amazon effect, right? Mm-hmm. Like they have such spending power and they have such infrastructure in place. It's so hard to compete against something as established like that. It's not to say that you can't do it, but to do it on like a mass scale. Jeff, I thought your point before about the Postal Service was good because they do, at least there is that infrastructure like that. That's like maybe a realistic hope with time. That's a real a real major third option because they're already national. They've got so many people. They have, recognition, et cetera. So, but it like a total independent, like 4th major player coming in, it's hard to see that happening like on a national. If you think of it, let me know.
Now, the US
what about Amazon just adding it Amazon's already got infrastructure. What if they just added more trucks? Like they already are doing deliveries to every neighborhood in the world.
See, we've already solved the world's problems in a half an hour like that.
It's going to come down to Amazon or Elon Musk. Like one of those two are going to come out with some type of logistics company, to rival UPS.
It's fun to dream and solve problems.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah.
But listen, I know we're running short on time, and I do want to touch on, hypothetical solutions to this particular problem. And Chris, I know we talked before the podcast a little bit, and you had mentioned, maybe going, depending on your capacity and things like that, with like LTL shipments. And we also discussed, the ripple effect that a strike from UPS would cause on domestic shipping. And speaking of LTLs and ripple effects, the whole situation with Yellow Trucking that's just happened over the last day or two. Yellow Trucking is now like filing bankruptcy, and it's like 30,000 trucks that are gone from the fleet essentially. So do you want to touch on that at all with Yellow and what that's going to do to LTL shipments domestically and things like that?
Yeah, I'll try to be super quick. So what analysts are saying, this is just research I've done. This is me saying it. It's what some of these people who study this are saying. It is that you're going to see a rate increases most likely in less than truckload shipments for that reason. You've removed capacity from the fleet, and Yellow was known as being a low cost provider. So if you were someone who was used to using Yellow, you're probably going to pay more when you go someplace else. The good news on Yellow though is even though it's 30,000 trucks out of the fleet, and I think it was 300 terminals nationwide that they operated out of, there was enough excess capacity from what I've read in the LTL national infrastructure, if you will, to absorb the Yellow's business without there being like big supply chain disruption or anything like that. But you're going to probably expect to see, rates go up because there's now that excess capacity is gone. So the service they provide is at more of a premium. So it's going to cost more.
Well, I mean, anytime something like that happens where there's disruption, there's always opportunity as well. So maybe some of these other trucking companies can step in and buy some of the trucks and hire some of these employees and drivers and stuff at a certainly a reduced cost. And
like
really
acquisitions in this industry.
Yeah. Yeah. And, speaking of our industry and solving the world's problems, like I was saying, maybe we need to develop some type of courier buying group where we just, we need to teach the logistics companies how to create buying groups and national accounts so that we can,
streamline this a little bit. Yeah.
Courier network where it just goes from that courier to that courier to that courier. And hey, your package is delivered.
Yeah. So. Well, if you think of it, like I said before, let me know. I'm happy to try to invest. Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, it does.
It sounds good. All right, you guys have anything else to add to the conversation? I mean, we could probably go on another 10, 15 minutes.
I know.
But
not at all. But Chris, thank you. You're a wealth of knowledge. And I know you were the first person I thought of for this because you have invested so much time and researching this. And we appreciate all of your feedback on this tremendously. It was great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you guys so much. It's a blast to come on and chat.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. The only thing I was going to add was, it's almost nice to have the threats of things happening without them happening because you end up going through these business mental exercises, like, okay, so if this does happen, then what do we do? You never have these backup plans until you're faced with the threat of them. So this is one of those things as we started to creep closer. It's like, all right, we're going to set up our, make sure our scheduled for this on FedEx, and we have this USPS corporate account here, so we can use this for this. So we were preparing for it, even though we didn't have to use it. But you never know. So,
you got to keep the sword sharp,
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, Chris, definitely appreciate you coming on. This podcast was brought to you by our good friends over at Bell Promo. They're the home of the 12-piece minimum on everything. They offer simplified pricing, one low setup, and never repeat setups, regardless of the number of colors, locations, or decoration method. Bell Promo has the largest inventory of product styles and colors in top categories like drinkware, bags, writing instruments, and apparel. Be the reason someone smiles today and check them out at bellpromo.com. Tell them the Industry Insider sent you. And until next time, guys, we'll be seeing you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of PromoCorner's Industry Insider. For more great content from industry thought leaders, including podcasts, blogs, and videos, visit promocorner.com.